Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a new season in your life. You feel the weight of silence around you, the quiet of moments when no one seems to understand what you are going through, and perhaps even the discomfort of feeling alone. But what if I told you that this very season, this very isolation, is not a void, not a punishment, not a sign that God has forgotten you? What if I told you that God Himself is intentionally positioning you, guiding you, and preparing you for a breakthrough so powerful that it will transform everything you thought you knew about your life? Today, I want to speak directly to your heart about the profound reasons why God might be isolating you, why He is allowing you to walk through moments of solitude, and how these moments are shaping you for His divine purpose. What you are experiencing is not random. Every trial, every quiet night of prayer, every unanswered question is a tool in God's hands, designed to refine you, strengthen you, and prepare you for the miraculous calling that is waiting for you. This is not a time to despair. It is a time to embrace God's presence more deeply than ever before. I want you to understand that isolation is a sacred workshop where God works quietly but powerfully in your life. He's building your faith, refining your character, giving you clarity, restoring your heart, and teaching you to depend on Him in ways that will shape your destiny forever. As we journey through this message together, I want you to open your heart, to listen with anticipation, and to receive the encouragement that God is speaking directly to you. By the end of this message, you will see your isolation not as a season of waiting, but as a powerful season of preparation, a time when God is crafting you into exactly the person you need to be to step into the victory, purpose, and blessing He has ordained for your life. So I invite you now to lean in, to open your spirit, and to prepare to be inspired, encouraged, and transformed as we explore why God is isolating you and how He is using this season to elevate you to the place of your divine destiny. When God chooses to isolate a person, it is never random or without purpose. The first key reason He does this is preparation for a greater purpose, a divine assignment that He has designed specifically for each life. Every believer has been created with unique gifts, talents, and a destiny that is far beyond what the natural eye can see. Yet many fail to step into their full potential because they have not been adequately prepared. God understands this, and in His infinite wisdom, He often calls His children into seasons of isolation to ensure that when the time comes to step into their divine purpose, they are ready. During these periods, the distractions of the world are minimized, and the noise that often clouds judgment is silenced, allowing the believer to focus on what truly matters. It is in these moments that God begins to shape, mold, and equip His child, ensuring that every skill, every attribute, and every lesson learned aligns with the greater vision He has for their life. Many people may feel abandoned during these times, but it is crucial to understand that God's isolation is an intentional act of preparation, not rejection. He is not punishing, He is positioning. The challenges, the quietness, and even the loneliness are tools in the hands of a loving Father who wants to cultivate strength, resilience, and a deep sense of purpose within His child. Through this preparation, God begins to teach patience, discipline, and the importance of waiting on His timing rather than rushing into situations that may seem favorable but are not aligned with His plan. While the world measures success by immediate results and visible achievements, God measures readiness by character, spiritual depth, and the alignment of a person's heart with His will. In isolation, a believer is given the time and space to reflect, to pray, and to connect with God on a level that is often impossible when surrounded by constant noise, obligations, and distractions. It is a sacred time for introspection, for understanding one's strengths and weaknesses, and for refining skills that will be essential in the execution of God's plan. This preparation is not limited to spiritual development alone, but extends to emotional and mental fortitude. God understands that stepping into a divine purpose often comes with opposition, criticism, and trials. By isolating His child, He He allows them to build resilience and confidence in His provision, ensuring they can navigate challenges without compromising their faith or purpose. Many biblical examples illustrate this principle. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading a nation. Joseph endured years of slavery and imprisonment before rising to a position of influence. David spent time as a shepherd before becoming a king. In each case, God used periods of isolation to prepare His chosen ones for roles of immense responsibility and impact. God's preparation during isolation also instills clarity of vision. When external influences are removed, it becomes easier to hear God's voice, to understand His guidance, and to recognize the doors He is opening. The isolation period becomes a sacred workshop where God crafts strategy, instills wisdom, and cultivates spiritual insight. Believers may feel impatience, frustration, or doubt during these times, but the deeper truth is that God is orchestrating circumstances to position them perfectly for their divine purpose. The lessons learned, the faith strengthened, and the character built during isolation will ultimately ensure that when the appointed time arrives, the believer can walk confidently into their destiny, equipped, mature, and fully aligned with God's plan. Isolation then is not a season of stagnation, but a dynamic period of divine preparation that enables a believer to fulfill their God-given purpose with excellence and integrity. Spiritual refinement and growth are central reasons why God places His children in seasons of isolation, and understanding this truth is essential for every believer seeking to fulfill their divine purpose. God is deeply concerned not just with what we accomplish, but with who we become in the process. For He knows that unrefined gifts and undeveloped character can lead to failure, pride, or misuse of the very blessings He intends to bestow. When God isolates a person, it is often to remove distractions, detours, and influences that can dilute spiritual growth, allowing Him to focus entirely on the transformation of the heart and mind. In these periods, He exposes areas of weakness, hidden fears, and unresolved issues that may have been overlooked in the busyness of life. Spiritual refinement requires confronting oneself honestly, acknowledging sins, habits, and attitudes that are incompatible with God's holiness, and surrendering them to His cleansing power. God uses isolation to refine a believer's faith through challenges and trials that test patience, resilience, and trust in Him. It is in the quiet moments, away from the approval of others, that the soul begins to shed superficiality and embrace authenticity. For God desires a child who is genuine, humble, and fully surrendered to His will. Just as precious metals are purified in fire, a believer's spirit is strengthened through testing, pressure, and intentional reflection during isolation. The growth that occurs in these seasons is not always comfortable or easy, for refinement requires endurance, humility, and willingness to allow God to prune and shape the soul. God often removes familiar comforts and supportive structures during these times to teach reliance solely on Him. This reliance is crucial because true spiritual maturity cannot exist where dependence on people or material circumstances takes precedence over dependence on God. As the believer learns to navigate the quiet, the loneliness, and the uncertainty, they develop spiritual muscles that prepare them for greater responsibilities, leadership, and impact. The process of refinement also cultivates discernment and wisdom as God teaches the believer to differentiate between fleeting desires and eternal priorities, between human approval and divine affirmation, and between temporary solutions and lasting solutions that align with His kingdom purposes. In isolation, the believer learns the importance of discipline, consistent prayer, meditating on the Word, and maintaining a lifestyle of integrity even when no one is watching. This spiritual cultivation ensures that when God calls them into action, they are ready to walk in authority, confidence, and righteousness, unshaken by opposition or temptation. Historical and biblical examples repeatedly demonstrate this principle. Daniel was taken into exile, removed from familiar surroundings, and yet through isolation and divine discipline, he became a man of unwavering faith and wisdom whose influence changed kingdoms. Elijah experienced times of solitude that strengthened his connection to God, enabling him to fulfill his prophetic mission with clarity and courage. Even Jesus himself sought moments of solitude before major ministry milestones, emphasizing that spiritual refinement often requires intentional separation from crowds, opinions, and worldly distractions. In the same way, God uses isolation to polish his children, to refine their character, and to equip them with spiritual discernment that is indispensable for fulfilling his plans. Isolation becomes a laboratory for spiritual transformation, where patience, endurance, humility, and faith are cultivated intentionally. The believer emerges not just ready to face life's challenges, but empowered to walk in purpose, equipped with wisdom, and grounded in God's unshakable principles. Growth and refinement during these seasons prepare the believer for greater authority, deeper intimacy with God, and the capacity to handle blessings responsibly, ensuring that every step taken after isolation aligns with his divine plan and manifests his glory in and through their life. Clarity and direction are vital reasons God allows his children to experience isolation. And understanding this principle can transform the way a believer perceives periods of solitude. In the busyness of life, it is easy to become distracted, misled, or pulled in multiple directions by the pressures, opinions, and demands of the world. God, in his infinite wisdom, recognizes that to fulfill a divine purpose, a believer must be able to hear his voice clearly and follow his guidance without confusion or compromise. Isolation creates the environment necessary for this clarity to emerge, removing the noise that often clouds judgment and conceals his plan. During these seasons, God speaks in whispers that are drowned out when a person is surrounded by constant activity, obligations, or the influence of others. By drawing a believer away from external distractions, God provides a sacred space where focus is sharpened, priorities are reordered, and the path forward becomes more visible. This clarity is not simply intellectual understanding, but a deep spiritual insight that aligns the heart, mind, and soul with God's purposes. In isolation, the believer has the opportunity to reflect on past experiences, recognize patterns that may have led to mistakes, and discern lessons that are essential for future success. It is a time when the Holy Spirit can illuminate hidden truths, provide solutions to complex problems, and reveal opportunities that were previously unseen. God's guidance during isolation is often accompanied by a sense of peace, assurance, and confidence, even when circumstances are uncertain or difficult. This inner clarity allows the believer to make decisions that are rooted in faith rather than fear, in obedience rather than convenience, and in long-term vision rather than immediate gratification. Many believers fail to understand the importance of this period because they focus solely on the discomfort or the apparent lack of progress. However, God is using isolation to sharpen vision, align actions with his will, and ensure that the believer does not step into a path that leads to disappointment, harm, or unfulfilled potential. In these moments, he is often redirecting, correcting, or providing insight that could not be received in the midst of distraction. Clarity gained in isolation also strengthens discernment, enabling the believer to recognize false directions, misleading counsel, or opportunities that appear promising, but do not serve the ultimate purpose God has for their life. By learning to trust his guidance in solitude, the believer develops a deeper confidence in God's sovereignty and timing, understanding that every instruction, delay, or adjustment is intentional and designed for their benefit. Biblical examples repeatedly illustrate this truth. Joseph's time in prison, far from the palace and from familiar support, allowed God to orchestrate events that brought him to the position of influence where he could save nations. Moses spent decades away from Egypt, gaining clarity of purpose and preparing to lead God's people. Even Jesus, before major moments in his ministry, sought solitude to pray, meditate, and discern the Father's direction. In each instance, isolation was a deliberate season of divine clarity that enabled decisive, purposeful action when the appointed time arrived. The believer, therefore, should not view isolation as abandonment or punishment, but as a sacred opportunity to see life, purpose, and calling through God's eyes. During this time, prayers become sharper, thoughts more aligned with divine wisdom, and vision more focused. Decisions made after such a period are often marked by confidence, precision, and effectiveness because they are rooted in the clarity and direction provided by God Himself. Isolation is therefore not a pause but a period of strategic alignment where God's guidance transforms uncertainty into understanding, confusion into insight, and hesitation into deliberate action, ensuring that when the believer moves forward, every step is in harmony with His divine plan and every action contributes to the fulfillment of their God-given destiny. Healing and restoration are central reasons God brings His children into seasons of isolation. And understanding this truth can transform the way a believer perceives times of solitude. Life often leaves emotional scars, spiritual wounds, and unresolved pain that, if unaddressed, can hinder a believer's purpose and growth. God, in His infinite wisdom, knows that before He entrusts a person with greater responsibility or blessings, He must first restore them fully, bringing wholeness to areas that have been broken, neglected, or damaged. Isolation provides the quiet and sacred space where this healing can occur, away from the distractions, pressures, and demands of the world. It is during these times that God draws near to repair what has been wounded, mend broken relationships, and restore inner peace that may have been lost through betrayal, disappointment, or past mistakes. The process of healing is often gradual and requires patience, introspection, and surrender. And God uses isolation to guide the believer through this transformative journey. Many fail to recognize that unresolved pain can manifest as fear, doubt, or insecurity, affecting decisions, relationships, and the ability to step fully into God's calling. By allowing isolation, God removes external influences that might perpetuate pain or reinforce unhealthy patterns, creating an environment where true restoration can take place. During these seasons, God often brings spiritual insight that helps a believer understand the root of their pain, recognize destructive cycles, and release bitterness, resentment, or unforgiveness that may have taken hold. This process strengthens the believer's character, deepens faith, and fosters humility, equipping them to navigate future challenges with wisdom and grace. Healing and restoration also reconnect the believer with God's love and provision, reminding them that their worth and identity are anchored in Him alone, not in human validation or worldly success. In isolation, prayer becomes more intimate, reflection becomes more honest, and the heart becomes more open to God's transformative work. Just as a garden must sometimes be cleared and tilled to allow new growth, a believer's soul may need periods of solitude to remove the debris of past wounds and create fertile ground for spiritual renewal. Biblical examples provide insight into this principle. David spent time alone in the wilderness, a period that healed, strengthened, and prepared him to lead a nation. Elijah, discouraged and overwhelmed, experienced moments of isolation where God restored his spirit and renewed his sense of mission. Even Jesus, before major moments in his ministry, withdrew to places of solitude, often after times of trial or opposition, to seek restoration, clarity, and renewed strength. Isolation, therefore, is not a season of abandonment, but a deliberate divine strategy for complete restoration. It allows God to address areas of brokenness, heal hidden wounds, and equip the believer to operate from a place of wholeness rather than deficiency. Through this healing, the believer emerges stronger, more resilient, and more capable of fulfilling God's plans with confidence, faith, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Restoration during isolation also fosters compassion and empathy, preparing the believer to minister to others effectively, as God often equips those who have been healed to extend His love and healing to the world around them. The process may be uncomfortable or lonely at times, but it is intentional, deliberate, and designed to produce a transformed life that is fully aligned with God's will. In every sense, isolation becomes a sanctuary where God's restorative power can work without interference, ensuring that the believer is not only healed, but also prepared to embrace the blessings, responsibilities, and destiny that lie ahead. ChatGPT said, dependence on God is the foundational principle behind why He often places His children in seasons of isolation. And understanding this truth is vital for every believer seeking spiritual maturity. The world constantly offers avenues to rely on human wisdom, worldly resources, or personal strength, but God desires His children to cultivate an unshakable reliance on Him alone. When a believer is surrounded by constant support, approval, or convenience, it becomes easy to lean on others or depend on circumstances rather than trusting fully in God's provision and guidance. Isolation strips away these comforts and dependencies, creating a sacred environment where the believer is compelled to turn to God as the ultimate source of wisdom, strength, and sustenance. It is in these moments that prayer becomes lifeline, the Word becomes sustenance, and faith transforms from theoretical belief into practical lived experience. Dependence on God is not simply about asking for provision, but about learning to trust His timing, obey His guidance, and submit completely to His will, even when circumstances appear uncertain or unfavorable. In isolation, the believer often encounters moments of doubt, fear, or discouragement, yet these challenges serve a divine purpose to strengthen reliance on God and to reveal that human support, though helpful, is never sufficient for the fullness of His plan. As the believer learns to depend solely on God, they develop spiritual resilience, patience, and humility, recognizing that every blessing, opportunity, and breakthrough flows from Him. This dependence also deepens intimacy with God, fostering a relationship grounded in trust rather than convenience or habit. Many believers underestimate the value of learning to rely completely on God, but history and Scripture demonstrate that those who cultivate this dependence are the ones most equipped to handle leadership, responsibility, and the pressures of life aligned with God's purpose. Biblical examples abound. Moses relied on God to deliver the Israelites and to guide him through challenges that no human wisdom could overcome. Daniel depended on God's strength and wisdom to navigate a foreign culture and political intrigue, and Paul consistently demonstrated reliance on God even when facing imprisonment, persecution, and hardship. In each case, isolation or separation from worldly support created a scenario in which God could strengthen their dependence and prepare them for greater responsibilities. Dependence on God in isolation also teaches discernment, helping believers distinguish between what is temporary and what is eternal, between human solutions and divine solutions, and between self-reliance and God-reliance. This discernment is crucial because it shapes decisions that honor God's plan rather than seeking immediate gratification or short-term relief. Furthermore, learning to depend on God fosters humility, a vital quality for anyone stepping into leadership, influence, or spiritual authority. God resists pride, but He exalts those who recognize their need for Him in every area of life. The process of isolation, therefore, is transformative. It removes reliance on the seen, the immediate, and the familiar, while cultivating trust in the unseen, the eternal, and the perfect will of God. During this time, the believer discovers the depth of God's provision, the constancy of His faithfulness, and the clarity of His guidance, internalizing lessons that will remain with them throughout life. Ultimately, the dependence cultivated in these seasons ensures that when the believer steps back into interaction, ministry, or leadership, they do so grounded in God's power, unshaken by circumstances, and capable of navigating challenges with divine wisdom. Isolation is not a period of abandonment, but a deliberate strategy by God to nurture a believer who is capable of walking in faith, obedience, and full reliance on Him alone, fully equipped to fulfill His divine purpose without distraction, compromise, or self-sufficiency. Testing faith and obedience is a profound reason why God sometimes isolates His children, and understanding this truth is essential for anyone seeking to walk faithfully in His purposes. Isolation is not meant as punishment or rejection, but as a deliberate season designed to reveal the depth and genuineness of a believer's commitment to God. In the busyness of life, it is often easy to claim faith or obedience when circumstances are favorable, when friends offer support, or when recognition is abundant. However, true faith is proven not in comfort but in challenge, And genuine obedience is demonstrated not when it is convenient, but when it requires trust beyond understanding. God uses periods of isolation to test these qualities, placing His children in situations where reliance on Him alone is necessary, where distractions are removed, and where external validation is absent. In these moments, a believer must choose consistently to trust God, to pray, to remain steadfast in His word, and to continue walking in obedience even when the outcome is not immediately visible or understandable. This testing is not random. It is purposeful, designed to cultivate spiritual maturity, resilience, and integrity. Through isolation, God reveals areas of strength and weakness, exposing tendencies toward doubt, impatience, or self-reliance, while simultaneously encouraging growth in patience, perseverance, and unwavering trust. It is a time when the believer learns that God's timing is perfect, that His plans are higher than human understanding, and that obedience, even in secrecy or solitude, carries eternal significance. Many times these seasons are uncomfortable because they require letting go of control, surrendering personal agendas, and submitting fully to God's direction. Yet this discomfort is part of the refining process, revealing the depth of faith and the authenticity of obedience. Biblical narratives illustrate this principle clearly. Abraham was called to leave familiar surroundings and at times to act in faith without knowing the full picture, and his obedience was tested through trials and promises that seemed impossible. Job experienced immense suffering in isolation, yet his unwavering faith and obedience demonstrated the strength of his character and led to divine restoration. Even Jesus Himself submitted to periods of solitude and testing in the wilderness, resisting temptation and demonstrating obedience that served as a model for all believers. Isolation allows God to test not just action but attitude, heart motive, and consistency. It distinguishes between superficial faith that depends on circumstances and deep faith rooted in the character of God. It also refines obedience, teaching that true submission is measured by adherence to God's will, regardless of personal comfort, social pressure, or immediate reward. These tests are designed to strengthen the believer, not weaken them, producing a spirit that is resilient, unwavering, and fully aligned with divine purpose. As the believer endures these tests, they gain confidence in God's provision, courage to face future challenges, and clarity in their calling, knowing that their faith has been proven in the crucible of solitude. Over time, this process produces a refined character, unwavering trust, and a readiness to step into God's plans with integrity, authority, and faithfulness. Testing in isolation also prepares the believer for leadership, influence, and spiritual responsibility, ensuring that when opportunities arise, they respond with wisdom, discernment, and steadfast devotion. God's testing is never punitive. It is a deliberate and loving strategy to reveal spiritual maturity, to develop endurance, and to ensure that every step taken in the future is grounded in faith, obedience, and divine alignment. Through these periods, believers emerge stronger, more resilient, and fully prepared to walk in the fullness of God's purpose for their lives. As we draw this message to a close, it is important to reflect on the profound truth that God's isolation is not a season of punishment, rejection, or abandonment. On the contrary, it is a deliberate and loving strategy designed to prepare, refine, heal, guide, strengthen, and test His children so that they may walk fully into the destiny He has set before them. Every moment of solitude, every challenge faced in silence, every unanswered question, and every season of waiting is an opportunity for growth, intimacy with God, and alignment with His divine purpose. It is in these moments, away from the distractions of the world and the influence of human opinions, that God works most powerfully in a believer's life, shaping character, nurturing faith, and clarifying vision. Understanding this truth allows us to embrace isolation, not with fear or frustration, but with faith, hope, and patience, recognizing that the unseen work being done in our hearts is preparing us for the miracles, victories, and breakthroughs that lie ahead. God's intention is never to leave us stagnant or broken. He is always moving, always working, and always orchestrating circumstances for our ultimate good and His glory. The periods of silence, the trials of solitude, and the testing of faith are all carefully designed to ensure that when we emerge, we do so strengthened, confident, and fully equipped to walk in alignment with His will. Every challenge we endure, every lesson we learn, and every moment we spend in prayer and reflection during these seasons is a stepping stone toward the fulfillment of His promises and the manifestation of His divine plan in our lives. By trusting Him in isolation, by remaining obedient even when the way is unclear, and by allowing Him to refine and restore us, we cultivate a spiritual resilience, wisdom, and maturity that cannot be attained in times of ease or distraction. Today, as we reflect on why God may be isolating us, let us embrace this season with open hearts, unwavering faith, and gratitude for His perfect plan. Let us remember that this period is temporary, purposeful, and powerful, and that the God who has called us into solitude is the same God who will lift us into our appointed destiny, equip us for every challenge, and bless the works of our hands. As we step forward, let us do so with renewed determination, faith-filled hearts, and the confidence that God is with us every step of the way. He is our guide, our healer, our strength, and our source of clarity. Let us not measure this time by its discomfort, but by its potential to transform us into vessels ready to fulfill His divine purpose. May we leave this reflection encouraged, strengthened, and inspired to embrace God's plan for our lives, trusting that the isolation is merely the preparation for the greatness He intends to manifest through us. I want to sincerely thank each of you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to open your hearts to this message. Your presence here, your engagement, and your receptivity are a testament to your faith and your desire to grow closer to God. Thank you for allowing these words to reach you, for reflecting on their meaning, and for committing to walk faithfully in the seasons God has designed for your life. May you leave with a renewed sense of purpose, peace, and confidence in His perfect timing, knowing that the best is yet to come. And may God continue to guide, protect, and bless each one of you abundantly.